on Daled Amud Aleph 4a. I've got some graphics this evening. Oh, I'm showing you one second. Share screen. Everyone see that?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, we are here where the hanging hay is. Hanging hay. Put it on the group that we're on.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? In England this week.
Yes.
I was away last couple of Tuesdays. We were away the next couple. So I'm with you now. So where are we up to? We must be on
Daled Amud Aleph.
Daled Amud Aleph. Lovely. Rooting stuff, as they say.
You see that on the screen? Can you still see it on the screen?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I can. I've got the page there. Yeah.
Just above the diagrams.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll make a start. If people will join us, we'll just do a quick recap. Okay. So we learned very early on in the Mishnah that a sukkah which is Esrim Amma, 20 Ammas or above, is possible. Two possible reasons. One is that people don't look that high up, they don't see the schach, and we said the schach is the defining feature of a sukkah, and if you don't see the schach, then it's not considered to be a sukkah. The other potential thing is that it should be a diras arai, it should be a temporary sukkah, pardon me. The sukkah should be a temporary dwelling, and something of that height would have to be, by definition, a permanent structure. And even if it was built in a temporary way, it would be considered to be permanent because of its height, and therefore it's also possible. Because it said Shivash Yamim, Basukot station with Shivash Yamim, you stood in sukkah for 7 days, meaning it should be a structure which is only theoretically could last for 7 days, not one which is built in such a way that it can only be built permanently. Then we saw last time that what happens if, could you make kosher a sukkah which started off being possible because the schach was too high? What could you possibly do to reduce the internal height of a sukkah to bring it below the 20 ammas limit? And we start off with the case we said that you could perhaps, let me just find where it is. Where am I? Helps if I'm on the right track, wouldn't it? It would help. It would help. Yeah. So the Gemara at the end of Gimel Amud Beis, it said, the person could, what happens if you laid mattresses or cushions on the floor of the sukkah with the intention of sitting on that? That would then reduce the height below 20 ammas. Would that be okay? So he said, the Mishnah said no. Sorry, the Gemara said no, because most people don't want their mattresses and their cushions to get spoilt by leaving them out in the sukkah for 7 days. And even if an individual says, no, I don't have an issue with it, we would say, no, we always go, it can't be subjective. I think that's what we said. And therefore, that wouldn't be a valid way of reducing the internal height of the sukkah. So that wouldn't work. What about putting straw or earth on the floor of the sukkah? And then we had a bit of a machlokas. Well, actually, everyone agrees when it comes to straw and dirt, when a person's intention is not to take it out the sukkah, just to give up on its use, not use it ever again, everyone would agree that works, and that would reduce the internal height. What happens if you have the straw and the earth, but you have no plans to remove it after Sukkot, or you just put dirt there without actually having any intentions whatsoever? Then we had a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yossi said that that would be mevatel, and that would be a good way. Whereas the Tanna Kama, the first opinion in the Brisa, would say no, that's no good. And then we have a third case, which is you put teven, you put straw down without having any thought of what your future intentions are for it, or you put straw down and earth down, and your intention was to remove it. Everybody agrees. It's not considered to be mevatel. It's not considered to be nullified, and therefore it wouldn't be any good for reducing the internal height of the sukkah. Having said that, that leads on to where we are up to now. So then we saw the next thing we saw was, and this is up here. Where are we? Here. Where the Gimel is. What happens if you've got a sukkah which is 20 amas high, higher than that, but some of the ends of the leaves of the schach have dropped into the sukkah, so they're hanging through into the sukkah below 20 amas. What would the state of the sukkah? Would it be considered the sukkah, because the majority of the schach is above 20 amas, it's possible, or could some of these leaves which are now below 20 amas be considered to be enough of schach and therefore permit the sukkah? Says the Gemara, this is the test. Im sidasan meruba mechamasan kesheira, ve'imna pesula. If the amount of shade they provide is greater than the amount of light they allow in, the sun they allow in, then it's kosher. Because that's always the test with schach. Schach has to be, the density of the schach should be that it provides more shade than sunlight. So if these leaves, so here it's not about the majority of schach, here it's about, do these leaves in themselves provide a majority of shade or not? If they do, then great, then they are like kosher schach, even if they're in the minority of the totality of the schach. And since they're now below 20 amas, then the sukkah is kosher. V'im lav, says the Gemara, but if not, psula. If they don't provide more shade than sunlight, then it's possible. Does that make sense? Yeah? Good.
Yeah.
Next case, similar scenario. Ha'isa gavoa may yutafachim. In this case, now we've got a very small sukkah. We know that the minimum size for a sukkah is 10 tefachim. We're talking in height. It's about 80 centimeters high.
That's not high at all.
Not much at all. Yes, that's right. That's the minimum. Right? Now, what about that sukkah? If some of the leaves of the schach now they are hanging down into the sukkah, so they're below the 10 tefachim minimum limit, what would you think? Do we go according to the majority of schach, which is above 10 tefachim, or do we go with some of these leaves which are below 10 tefachim? Well, says the Gemara, we maybe could apply the same test as we did with the other case. And in fact, says the Gemara, Sava Abaya Lemeimas, Abaya thought to say that. He thought maybe the opposite. If the amount of sunlight they let through is more than the amount of shade they provide, then the sukkah would be kosher. Why? Because they're not of any significance. Because unless they're providing more shade than sunlight, that's not considered kosher schach. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it's as if it's not there at all. And therefore, we revert to the schach which is above 10 tefachim, which is kosher schach. Now, Abaya thought to say that, and that makes logical sense. However, Amalei Rava Hadira Suruchehi says Rava no. There's another consideration, because once you've got something, what was it that makes a sukkah apostle below 10 tefachim? Is considered to be a sukkah surucha. A dira surucha, says the Gemara. a dira surucha, which means an unpleasant dwelling.
Yeah.
It's unpleasant to be cramped in, even those of us who are vertically challenged. It's still unpleasant to be you've got the roof so low towards your head. And a dira surucha, again, the sukkah shahat, although it's meant to be a temporary dwelling, it also has to be, we say yeshiva in kedura, that we're meant to dwell in the sukkah as we would dwell in our houses. So no one's going to live in a house where the ceilings are so low that it's unpleasant. So too, no one is expected could dwell in a sukkah that's so low that it's unpleasant, and therefore, if it is that low, it's possible. So says the Rava, although your argument makes sense, which is, let's see whether the amount of schach that's hanging below 10 tefachim is sufficient to be considered a kosher schach, and if not, it would be kosher, then the sukkah would be kosher. Another factor comes into play, which is, since there's something which is hanging below 10 tefachim, regardless of whether it's kosher schach or not, it's no good. It's a dira surucha, it's an unpleasant dwelling. Adam da b'dira surucha, and no one lives in an unpleasant dwelling. Okay, so that would be no good. If you've got anything hanging below 10 tefachim, even if it's minimal significance in terms of the amount of shade it's providing, that immediately postles the sukkah, because it's now considered to be a sukkah which is less than 10 tefachim high. Okay, does that all make sense? Okay, we're going to carry on in a similar vein in terms of what methods you could go to making a previously postel sukkah kosher. It says the Gemara here, just one line above where the diagram is, 3 words in. Haisa. Esrim Amma. You've got a sukkah which is higher than 20 amas. Ubana ba it's ispata keneged dofen ha'em sami al panei kula. And you build in it a platform which is next to the 2 side walls, but between so I mean it touches 2 of the side walls on an L shape, but it also touches the opposite wall, as you can see in this diagram. So this is what it means. So it's touching here, this right angle here is touching both here and there. Can you see the cursor moving? Excellent. So this is the first case. So it's touching there and there, but it also stretches all the way along the width of the sukkah to touch the 3rd wall. Okay, this is not a great diagram actually. This line here shouldn't be considered anything. This is really just to mark the end of where this platform is, but it's not a wall. This is open now, open area. So we've got a part of it which is touching 1, 2, and 3 walls, reducing the height of the airspace from the schach to the ground to below 20 amas. Postel or kosher? So 50-50, anybody?
It's kosher.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, it wasn't a trick question.
Because all you've done is you've just raised the floor up.
You've raised the floor, that's right. Yeah. Instead of raising the roof, you've raised the floor, right? Yeah. And by so doing, you've reduced the internal airspace between the roof and the floor, and therefore since it's now below 20 amas, it's good. And now this is interesting. This part is interesting. What about this part here, the rest of the sukkah? Could you sit in the rest of this part of the sukkah and be yotzi the sukkah?
No.
Okay. Why?
Because it's a bit like if you have part of the sechach that's not touching a wall, you can't sit underneath that.
Oh, very good logic. Yeah, very good logic. Yeah, let's see what Rashi says. Because actually, Rashi says one thing, the Ritva actually says something else. Let's just have the Makkah and the Gemara. Gemara says, so the Gemara goes on and says one second, a bit more, this is important. V'yeshba, here we are, v'yeshba hechsher sukkah kashera. And on this platform, hechsher sukkah means the platform itself provides you with the minimum dimensions of a kosher sukkah, which is 7 tefachim square. So this area between here and here is 7 tefachim in itself. So this area itself would provide you with a kosher sukkah because of the minimum dimensions. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, then the whole sukkah is kosher. Why am I saying whole sukkah? Look at Rashi. Let's just find the Rashi. Yeah, it's the first of the Rashis. We go down a bit. Here, where it starts to get wide. The last of the narrow lines in Rashi. Here. You see that? Yeah. Says Rashi, the middle wall, so to speak. Says Rashi, the sum sukkah bashlosha defanos kimas nisan. As we've learned in our Mishnah, what do we say? The minimum number of walls a sukkah must have is 3. We say 2 and a bit, but that we're rounding it up to 3. Varaviis he kula pesach, and the 4th wall becomes is completely it's completely an entrance. So what's Rashi saying? Once you've got 1, 2, 3 walls, the 4th wall, this one, a notionary wall, you don't need to have at all. You can treat it totally like an entrance. Yeah, so this is an entrance. So once you've got your minimum, this is according to Rashi, once you've got the minimum dimension 7 by 7 at the right height, this rest of it, it is considered to be an entrance into it, and you could actually use it according to Rashi. It's a very interesting idea. Look at Rashi goes on. Yeah, look at the next Rashi. Go back down again. It's a long Rashi, which is always worrying. They're normally difficult. Al Panei Kula, says Rashi, Al Panei Kula. So what is he saying? Al Panei Kula means it's touching all of them, basically on the face of all of them, meaning it's touching all 3 walls. Shemagin base Rashi ha'etzba, when 2 sides of the platform reach the base tefanos, the 2 sides, hastadim, at the sides, I mean opposite each other, meaning going across the width, like that. But it's to be banin vitit, and this platform, says Rashi, was made out of stones and cement. In yeshba be'itztaba shir hechsher sukkah katana shiva tefachim umashahu, and Rashi says as long as this platform is itself the dimensions of a kosher sukkah, which is 7 and a bit tefachim. Tahainu roshev aruba v'shulchan, and we come back to what we said previously, which means you could at least get your head, the majority of your body, and your table in it. We said that was a minimum requirement, right? We said that's defined as 7 tefachim. Then, says the Gemara, kasheira, then it's kosher. Rashi continues, kasheira, kol ha-sukkah sheyesh la gimel defanos. The whole sukkah, which has 3 walls, is now kosher. Vayhechsha sukkah afilu mina itztaba v'hala. And this, the dimensions of the sukkah from the size, the space of the sukkah from the platform and continuing. So we calculate it from the edges of the platform. And therefore, since it's going to the middle wall, so to speak, it's kosher. We carry on, we find it. But tefanos v'hasadadim b'rachav ha'itzdaba, and the walls and the sides at the width of the platform. Hukshu ba, they make it kosher. Hare kain sukkah katana kashera. This is a small sukkah. As long as it's 7 by 7 and a bit, it's a kosher sukkah. V'aminu lekamanas. We'll see further on. Pasal ha'yotzim min ha'sukkah. If you've got an area of sukkah which means which extends beyond the kosher part of the sukkah. So you've got. Do you remember the shul sukkah this year? It was a very large sukkah, but they ran out of schach. Yeah, do you remember? So to one end, it was just completely uncovered. Now, what Rashi is basically saying is that according to the Gemara later on in Yud Tes Amud Aleph, if you've got a protrusion going beyond the end of the kosher sukkah, nidon kasukkah, it's judged like the sukkah. It's considered to be part of the sukkah.
Only up to a degree.
Sorry?
Only up to a certain degree. I mean, you can't just carry on ad infinitum. If it's a beautiful if then was it local or whatever? Or...
Yes. Within reason, yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about here the principle. The principle being that you could have an area of sukkah, which in fact, by the normal standards of the sukkah is possible, because it doesn't have the schach, and it doesn't have the walls. You know, for example, in this area here, this isn't a wall. That's why I'm making the point. This isn't a wall. It's got this and this, but the wall is over there. But it doesn't have a wall here. This is all open area.
It's about like an upside down Dofen Akuma.
Yeah, that's the way of looking at it. And we'll come to Dofen Akuma in a minute. In Yesh, carry on the Rashi, about 4 lines up near that Rashi. In Yesh Hefshe Sukkah Biyachad, if you've got a kosher sukkah altogether, V'od Yesh B'Sukkah Misham V'Ala, and then from that sukkah and onwards, Pasal, a piece of it which is not kosher, for example, you use materials which are not permitted for schach. It says Rashi, and very interesting because the Ritva disagrees with Rashi on this, but he said that once you've got a kosher sukkah, this is merely considered to be an extension of the kosher sukkah. Says Rashi, and therefore the whole of the sukkah is considered to be like one large sukkah, and it's all kosher.
Interesting.
Really interesting idea. Okay, so that's the first looking at way looking at it. Even putting that on one side, even if you disagree, and we see the Ritva says the Ritva doesn't disagree with that. Nevertheless, this part of there's no dispute whatsoever. This part of the sukkah is definitely 100% kosher. Okay, because you've got the 3 walls that have been reduced in terms of their airspace to the schach. Okay, that's the first case. Now let's move on to the second case. Says the Gemara, now at the end of the line here, Uminat Sad. What happens if you place the platform sideways along the sukkah, this way, like this? So now it's touching only 2 walls, 1, 2, at 90 degrees. Okay, but again, this is not a wall here. That's just the end of the platform. There's a gap now between where the platform internally ends. So you're basically going to have 2 heights. You have a split. Let's call it a split level sukkah. Not easy to say after a few whiskeys. A split level sukkah. Yeah, you're going to have one which is a higher floor and obviously closer to the ceiling, the schach, and the other bit drops down, and you've got 20 amas to the schach. So what does the Gemara say? Uminasad, says the Gemara, if you've got it set up in this way that the platform is at one side, im yesh misfasa itztaba lekotel dalad amas v'sula. If from the edge of the end of this platform to the wall over here is more than 4 amas, it's possible. And again, Gemara continues, however, pachos mi'arba amas k'sheira. If this space between the end of the platform and this third wall, which we know is important because you have to have it at 3 walls, if it's less than 4 amas, it's kosher. Yeah? Look at Rashi. Uminad Sad. quite way down here. Minat Sad, says Rashi. Minat Sad, Kugon, in Bana Itzba Alpine Echa Medofne Stadim. Says Rashi, for example, if you build it next to one of the side walls, meaning this is the side wall, and it's parallel, and it's now 90 degrees to that one. Yeah, that way around. Says Rashi, Pasula, the Gemara said it's possible if there's more than 4 amas between where the platform ends and where this side wall is, it's possible. Says Rashi, why? Pasula, because this platform only gives dimensions to 2 walls. Also, Shasama, those which are next to it. Minat Sad on the side. And the middle wall, so to speak, this is what Rashi means by this. That's why I made it look like a wall. The middle wall, which is the edge of the platform. Sorry, which one here? To Rosh Ha'Etzba, Magia Loi reaches towards it. Says Rashi, Pachos Meidalad Amos Keshera. If it is less than 4 amos, then it's kosher. Why? Sha'afhu Huksha Al Yada. Because it also makes this wall kosher now through it. The Kaimalan, as we'll establish later on in Vav Amud Beis, Halacha Moshe Sinai, we have a law transmitted from Moshe Rabbeinu from Sinai itself. When he gave the Torah, he gave certain halachas directly to Moshe Rabbeinu as well, which were transmitted to us. Mekshei sukkah alidei akimas dofen ad arba amos. Halacha Moshe Sinai is this: that you can make a sukkah kosher through the principle of a bent wall, as long as it's within 4 amos. So if there's less than 4 amos from this wall to a kosher part of the sukkah, we consider this part of this wall, actually this space is not actually considered to be roof, but continuation of a curved wall. It's a wall that's going up, curving over, and then joining. This is like an imaginary edge of this wall. We've extended this edge of this wall across the top to join up with the itztaba, the platform. And therefore, as long as it's less than that works by the principle of Dofin Akuma, the bending wall, and that would be a kosher sukkah, because now you've got an internal airspace of at least 7 by 7 below 20 amas, and we're all good. Let's just carry on in the Rashi. To Kaimalan, we said, that was the next line. Yeah. Arba amos chaser marshes against his Rashi. Has to be just a little bit less than 4 amas between them. V'roin schach ha'elyon ha'mechubar l'dofen ha'rakok ki'ilu hu min ha'dofen atzmo. And we consider the schach, the kosher schach, which is attached to this wall and that wall, as if it's extended all the way to this wall as well. And that this wall is a wall in itself. V'akum ad keneged, and it's bent, or it extends until it's next to the edge of ad keneged shvas ha'itztaba, until it's next to the edge of the platform. V'kan modedim es govon misvas ha'itztaba. And therefore we now calculate the height of the sukkah from the edge of this platform. Ulamalam barit. V'apapi Shemitachav nimshach kalape chutz ho v'rosha eina kala adkan zeu gova halalu v'arei nishmat halalu mitachtav. So Rashi's final point Rashi's making is, with this case, compared to that case, actually this bit you couldn't sit under. But even though it's less than Dalet Amos between here and here, and we're saying if that's the case, then we consider as if the wall has gone up, bent over, joined up, reached to the point where beneath it would be the platform, which is now at a kosher height from the schach, we're all good. However, this bit, the bent wall, you can't sit under. So this whole area you couldn't sit under. Why? Because you can't sit under a wall. A wall is a kosher schach. Yeah? You can't have it both ways. You can bend your wall over, but you can't sit underneath your wall. Yeah, so it's arched over you, and it's joining that now with an imaginary wall, which is the line rising up. This is what we love the idea of called good asik, but it's an imaginary line coming up from the platform all the way up to the kosher schach. Schach, which is now below 20 amas, but you can't have it both ways. You can't then say, well, I'm going to sit under this bit as well. So you see how that's different from the other case, though. Yeah, because we're not trying to bend this wall at all. We're just saying this is just an open area, and it's kosher by date of the fact that you've got a minimum kosher area anyway. We're not saying that here. That's a completely different thing. So it's really fascinating how by merely flipping it, just literally turning it 90 degrees, you've got the space that can't be used, but you've saved it. Nevertheless, you saved it. You saved yourself because. If it had been any more than 4 amas, it would have been completely, the whole thing would have been completely possible. So we're good. Okay. As I said, there is a ritva on this. Let's see if I can summarize it. Yeah. Yeah, it says that Ritva Minad Sad. So the second case, if it's on one side, Perish Nogas Bedofina Echad Shumin Hatzad. So it reaches from one wall from the other, just on one side. Mixas Dofin Sai. There's only a bit in the middle. Yesh Misfasa Schach of the Kotel Abba Amos Pesula. If there is going to be more than 4 amos between here and here, then it'd be possible. Alpha Istaba says, very interesting, says Ritva. So if there's more than 4 amas between here and here, clearly that's no good. This is possible. This bit's possible. Says the Ritva, this bit's also possible as well. Also, the whole thing's possible. Why? Because you don't have 3 walls. You can't join to this wall. It's too far. So you've only got 1, 2, and that's no good. So that means it possible the whole of the internal area. Because by the end you've only got 2 walls, and that's no good.
So this principle still holds if it's built on a hill rather than actually build the platform?
Say again, sorry?
Or not? So this is all when you put a platform in, a man-made platform. But if you're on a hill at an angle, does the principle still hold that as, this bit is under 20, then and it's in case A, the whole thing's valid, even if in further down the line, you've got 50% of the sukkah is over 20.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, that would be. I think you basically say that's like a natural platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if you've got, for example, you've got I don't know, like those the paddy fields, aren't they, like tiered?
Terraces. Yeah.
Terraces. Thank you. Terraces. Yeah. So you will have those sort of gardens, different heights of garden. Yeah. And if you've got your sukkah that part of it is on one part of the garden, the other bit, and it extends and it you've got different heights. Yeah, you could have, in theory, you could have that a natural internal platform, which means some point of the sukkah is kosher because it's less than 20 amas. Others will be possible, but depending how it runs. So if the correct height is going that way, and therefore it touches 3 walls, it'd make the whole area kosher. According to Rashi, you could use this space. According to Ritva, you couldn't. Whereas if it ran only this way, so let's say you extend outwards like that, and you've got different heights rather than different heights going out at the breadth, the width, but let's say the length is going out like that. So one's one height, one's another height. But it's only touching 2 walls. That's going to be no good. the whole thing's going to, if it's Daled Amos between there, the whole thing's no good. If it's less than Daled Amos, it's all good. You couldn't sit under that bit. Well, you can't sit under that bit. Okay, yeah, good point. Okay. Okay, let's carry on with Gemara. So we'll see. I just wanted to mention that the Ritva says, that's on the next bit. 1 second.
Share.
Okay, we'll come back to the bit more on the next bit. Let's carry on in the Gemara. So we saw the Rashi. Let's carry on in the Gemara. Says the Gemara. So we saw it in Rashi, but now the Gemara has actually spelled it out for us. How is this possible that this, as long as it's minimum less than Daled Amos, would be kosher? Says the Gemara.
You have to say hello.
There's Rashi. Hello. Says the Rashi. Says Gemara. My Kamashmala.
Grandpa's talking to the rabbi. Grandma's not. Grandpa is.
Well, that goes viral. That sort of thing goes viral, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Says Gemara. Says Gemara, my kamashmalan here. My kamashmalan. What is it that this comes to teach us? The Arminan Dofen Akuma. Tanina. So basically, that the principle of this comes to teach us the principle of Dofen Akuma, that you can have a wall bending over and joining up with a kosher schach. Okay, I said Rashi sort of stole the Gemara thunder a little bit by learning the Rashi that way around, but never mind. Says the Gemara, Tanina, it's taught in the Brisa. Next, another case. You have a house, and the roof of the house is destroyed, broken, and you put schach over the top of it. So you basically got. Let's draw this out. Just 1 second. I'm just going to get a pencil. Great. Okay. Can you see that? It's basically a square in a square, a box in a box. Right? This is, we're looking down on somebody's roof. Yeah, a flat roof, and a massive hole has opened up in the roof. Mm-hmm. Yeah? This is the hole. And I'm going to put a schach over the top of it. See the schach up over the top of it? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We've still got some solid roof here. Okay? So, says the Gemara, so a house which has got a holy roof, the ceiling, the roof has been broken. It says Rashi, Gagoy, Gagim Shalahem, Chalakin, this roof and the roofs of theirs were divided. Vishavin, they're flat roofs. I mean, they're not slanted roofs. In the middle of the roof, there's a hole. Says the Gemara, min hakotel lesichach Dalad Amas, Basula. If there is 4 amas between the schach and the wall, this is the top of the wall, so the end of the end of the roof wall. If there's 4 amas here of solid material, it's possible. This sukkah is possible. Yeah? However, if there's less than that, kashera, it's kosher. So if there's less than Dalad Amas here, it's kosher. How do we know that? What's that based on? The principle of Dofin Akuma. Yeah, as long as there's less than Dalad Amas here, between here, we consider this wall then comes up, bends over, and touches. So it's no longer roof, it's an extended wall. Okay? So we have, I think it's on Yud Zayin Omid Aleph. Yeah, it's actually a Mishnah. If you look on the Yud Zayin Omid Aleph, it's actually a Mishnah. It teaches this thing. Says the Gemara. Why do we need the halacha? Why do we need the Gemara to teach us this halacha of this case of Dofin Akuma? We have it implied by a Mishnah. The Mishnah said, if you've got such a situation where schach is more than 4 amas from the wall, it's possible. Which implies if it's less, then it's kosher. Why do you need to teach us our case? We could have learned it from somewhere else. Yeah, look at Rashi. Rashi just fills out the case for us. That was question about Pachos Ma'abos. Here, Pachos Me'aba Amos Kashera, says Rashi, Shetofnei Habayis Na'asen La Tefanos. The walls of the house become the walls of the sukkah. V'tikra Pasula Mavasekas Benehem, and the beams which are between the ends of the house and the schach, that's interrupt. They consider as if they're bending over as part of the wall. Up to this point. And therefore there's no possible, this is not considered to be possible schach because it's solid material. Rather, it's part of a wall and it's attached to kosher schach, and therefore it's good. So we have this case in a Mishnah further on, and it would have been a Mishnah that we would have learned before we learned this Gemara. So why did the Gemara have to bring this case over here to tell it teaches Dofin Akuma? So says the Gemara. Where are we? Yeah, Ma'ud Tamer says Gemara. Says the Gemara, you needed to bring this case because why? Ma'ud Tamer, because otherwise you might have thought Hasamhu to Chazei LeDofen. There, in the case of the Mishnah of the house with a hole in the roof, there you already have walls. You have walls already in existence, in kosher walls, so to speak. Aval hacha to lo chazei ledofen emaloi. But here in our case, where there isn't a wall, there's no wall here. Yeah, there's a gap. Yeah, that's not a wall. You might have thought to say no. Kamash Malan. Therefore, the Gemara has to come and teach us. Now, even in this case, even though there isn't an existing wall, the principle of Dofin Akuma works in order that it creates the wall for us, so to speak. So even though, you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah? That even though this wall is no good because it's too far, well, because it doesn't have schach touching it. By the principle of Dofin Akuma allows it to become treated like a wall, which you wouldn't have thought from the other case because there already has a wall. Yeah. Aber Hachal the later the Dauphin. Emelo, you might have thought no. The Rashi. No, let's have this as a bit more. Yeah. Perish. Kamos shehi akshav roi the Dauphin. Now it's kosher. Now it's fit to be used as a wall. Vein shama ala richel sach levad. Yeah. The difference between the two cases is this. What's wrong with this wall? What's wrong with it? If we left it without the platform, what's wrong with it?
It's too high.
Too high. Thank you. That's what Riv was saying to us. It's too high because the space above it is 20 amas. Well, it's not the case with the house. We never said with this case, we never said the schach was 20 amas above the ground. This wall is always, we should have mentioned it earlier, sorry, but this wall is always less than 20 amas. Was always less than 20 amas. The only problem we had was we thought it was too far away from the schach. We said no. Halakha l'Moshe Sinai, as long as it was within Daled Amos of the kosher schach, it's good. As you would have thought, well, we can't learn from that case to our case, because that case the wall was already a good wall because it was a wall below 20 amas. It was a wall that was at a height less than the schach of 20 amas, whereas this one is not. So you might have thought, well, since that's the case, you can't apply the rule of Dofin Akuma. Says the Gemara, no. Even in that case, it's a chiddush, it's an extension of Dofin Akuma that even though this starts off as a posel wall, through the means of Dofin Akuma, it becomes a kosher wall because it becomes notionary in line with the height of the platform, which is below 20 amas, and therefore it's good. And it's a stretch of imagination. You know, imagine an architect saying, "Oh no, don't worry, that's not a 20-foot wall. It's not a 20 amas wall. It's a 15 amas wall. You just have to imagine it to look like that." Yeah, they're sugar, but that's why you have to have a Gemara cock to be able to suggest such a thing. But when you've got a house like that, you know, obviously he's not going to be able to get away with it by saying, "Oh, there's no hole in your ceiling." That's not. He can't say that. But at least you can agree, oh, you're right. No, there are walls here, and all of these walls are below 20 amas. So we needed both cases to teach us that. That's as it says written. Come on, that's right. Okay. Next case. Where are we? It says the Gemara. Haisa Gavoa Mikaf Amma, Ubana Itztaba. Be'em Sa'isa, Im Yesh Misfasa Etzaba, Ledofin Abba Amas, the whole Reva Horava. Let's go back to our case like this. And this one I drew as well. No, in this case. Now you've got, again, the sukkah, too high. So in the middle of the sukkah, now, let's assume now this we'll use this diagram for a moment as a sukkah which is too high, looking down on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This now is the floor, not the ceiling, not the ceiling. Yeah, this is the floor. So on the floor, you build a platform in the middle. Yeah, to raise the height of the floor, to reduce the size of the sukkah. However, in each direction, it's 4 amas from the walls. Good or no good?
More than 4 or less than 4?
More. We'll start with more.
More, no good.
No good, correct. It says more. Look. Im yesh misvas itztaba ledofin abba amas l'chol revach v'revach. If from the edge of the platform to the walls is 4 amas, meaning 4 amas and a bit, more than 4 amas, in each direction, Pasula. So if in every direction there's at least 4 amas, this platform is no good because it's not connected to the walls. It's too far away from the walls. We can't suggest that the walls bend over and then theoretically hang from there. However, says Gemara, Pachos mi'arba amas k'shera. But if it's less than 4 amas, So if in any direction, but you need here 3, if 1, 2, 3 directions, it's less than 4 amas from the platform to the wall, says the Gemara, kosher. Because of why? Dofen Akuma. We'd say that each of these walls bends over and notionally hangs at a height of less than 20 amas from the schach. Says the Gemara, Micah Mashmalan. Same question. Why do we need to see that teaches that? Where could we have learned that from? Where have we learned that from? From this very picture. The broken house. We said the very same thing, haven't we? We've said that if you've got a hole in the roof, if it's more than, and you put schach on it, if it's more than Dalet Amos from the walls, it's possible. But if it's less, which implies if it's less, then Dofen Akuma bends the walls over, and it's as they're touching the kosher schach. What's the difference? You see the point that I was making?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same idea. And that's why I could use the same diagram. Mm-hmm. One looks like a ceiling, one looks like the floor space, and that's either the schach or that's the platform. So what's it coming to tell us? Says the Gemara, Da'amrinan. Where are we? Sorry. Da'amrinan Dofen Akuma. I know. There, here we're saying Dofen Akuma. There we're saying Dofen Akuma. It's exactly the same thing. Says the Gemara, Mahu Detema. You might have thought Dofen Akuma. Mirevach Achas Amrinan. Aval Kol Revach Revach Loi Kamash Malan. You might have thought that Dofen Akuma works when you only need it in one direction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That if you've got a ceiling where it's here and here, here and here, and less than 4 amas from here, then we can say Dofen Akuma. But not here on each side. You can't have it on 4 sides. You might have thought that. You might have thought only work once. Kamash Malan? No, long comes Gemara says no. Comes to tell you that even if it's in every single direction, so you don't have even one literal kosher wall. It's 4 walls that all are dependent on Dofen Akuma. Nevertheless, it's good. That's what Gemara is telling you. How do we learn it? From the case of the platform in the middle of floor space. This is now the floor. Platform on the floor to raise the floor in 4 directions. It's just less than 4 amas from the walls. Says the Gemara, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Interesting.
That's why we had to teach that case, because you might have thought otherwise that it was no good. Let's have a look at this a bit from here. Was a Rashi? Don't think it was a Rashi. No. Okay, next case. Says the Gemara. Yeah, nice case. No, so we've been dealing with 2 large dimensions. What about 2 small dimensions? Yeah, remember we said minimum height of the sukkah has to be 10 tefachim, otherwise it is a dira surucha, it's an unpleasant dwelling and no one's meant to stay in there. What happens if you've got, this is Gemara, Haisa Pesucha miyud tefachim. You've got a sukkah where the height is less than 10 tefachim. So it's possible. How would you remedy that? How would you increase the height of your sukkah without touching the schach? It's a riddle. Any ideas?
Well, you thin out the schach, but you'd be touching it.
Can't touch the schach.
No.
You can't go up, but you can go down. Says the
Oh,
Gemara.
you dig a hole in the ground.
Hole in the ground. You dig it out. Says Rashi. You dig. Now consider this to be
A hole in the floor.
an excavation. You're digging down now. Yeah? In order to in order to complete it to 10 tefachim. So let's say the walls are 9 tefachim high. So you dig a hole of 1 tefach down in the middle of the floor space. Says Gemara, Im yesh misfas chaka ulekotel gimel tefachim pasula. Now, what's happened is, I don't know if you can see this picture, it's quite a small picture, I'm sorry. Can you see that? No, what's that? Put that behind it. No. 1 second, I can't even see it myself. Yeah. Can you see? I'll redraw it. Give me 2 seconds. There was one I made earlier. Let me do one now. Okay. Okay, can you see that? There's your sukkah. That's the schach, 9 tefachim. What do you do? You dig a hole. You dig a hole of 1 tefach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the issue here? Is that going to work? You've got an internal space of 10 tefachim now. What's our issue? The walls. Yeah? Where do the walls start? Here and here. There's a gap between your pit and the walls. If it was the other way around, what would we say? Definitely. Let's bend the walls over to it. Yeah? If it was that way round, we'd be bending our walls.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's this way round. So says the Gemara, if there are, this is a different principle. Dofen Akuma only works one way, it doesn't work both ways. And this is the critical space here now.
So the pit is actually 10 tefachim wide.
7, minimum 7.
7, yeah.
We've got a space between the edge of the pit and the wall of 3 tefachim. 3 tefachim now, not amas, much smaller. This is we're talking about 3/8, 24 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
If it is 24 centimeters or more between the wall and the edge of the pit, we say posel. The whole sukkah's posel. It's too much of a gap between the pit and the wall. However, turn over. Pachos. I did turn over. I need to click next page. Here we go. It says the Gemara. Pachos mishlosha tefachim k'sheira. However, if it's less than 3 tefachim, then it's kosher. Look at Rashi, top of the page, left-hand side. Why is it kosher? Kalavud. Now, lavud means like joining. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai, just like Dofen Akuma is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, so is lavud. V'chashvinan lei ki'ilu hachakak levud u'magia ad hakotel. We consider with this principle, if it's less than 3 tevakim, so if it's less than 24 centimeters, we consider as if the edge of this pit extends, so it's notionally extended, and therefore it is in line with the wall, and therefore you've got a wall that's 10 tevakim high, reaching up to the scuff, and it's kosher, based on that principle. It's as if the pit has extended and reached the wall. Levud sniff says Rashi, and he puts in the old French word aposhtitz. Belaz davar shamarichin oso al yitei snifim kidei litznov chakak ala chakak. It's something which is extended through like an annexation. Litznov means to annex, to attach, to branch out. Sniff, we say sniff melucha, yes, like the royal annexation. Yeah, it joins the pit to the pit with the pit. Okay. Mm-hmm. So says the Gemara. Ask Gemara on this. My shna hasam the amiras pachos me'arba amos. My shna hacha the amiras pachos m'shosh tefachim. The halacha mishum Sinai of Dofen Akuma, what we said, as long as there's less than 4 amos, which is 4 amos is about 6 foot. That's okay. We'll bend the wall for you. Here we're saying, if there's any more than 24 centimeters, no good. This is more. It's wildly different. Why do we make such a distinction between something where we're saying, as long as it's less than 6 foot, you're okay, but if it's any more than 24 centimeters, it's no good? How can those two principles, one of Dofen Akuma, bend wall, and lavud extension, be so completely different?
Well,
go on.
Could it be to do with the relative size of the general structure? 3 tefachim is quite a big thing in a 7 tefach structure, whereas 4 amos is proportionally less than in a 20 amos structure.
True, but we're talking about principles here. We're not talking about structures. Because lavud and Dofen Akuma applies to anything. So, lavud can apply in a massive sukkah. Yeah? So, the principle is the same regardless of dimensions. It's just that the defining feature of the halacha is completely different. The defining feature of lavud is 24 centimeters. The defining feature of Dofen Akuma is 6 foot. Wildly different. So says the Gemara, how can the two be? So says the Gemara, end of the 3rd line. Hasam, ta'asei the Dofen, pachos me'arba amos sagi. There, in the case of the Dofen Akuma, so either with a platform or with a house with a hole in the roof, there you've already got walls. You already have walls. All you're doing is extending the wall. You're bending it over. And that we can say, well, we'll give you up to 6 foot to do that. Because the walls are already in existence. There's already something there to work with. Whereas, look at Rashi. 4th line of Rashi, so 3rd line. Hasam had the Issa the Dofen Pakus Ma'aba, this is the last of the wide lines of Rashi. Hasam the Ikasham Dofen Alav, the whole Dofen, the Aina Pachos Miyut, Shemo Dofen. What do we say? What was the definition of a wall? We said, last time we were talking about the definition of a house has to be 4x4. Definition of a wall is, once you've got it has to be 10 tefachim. Once it's 10 tefachim, it's a wall. Whether it's 10 tefachim or 20 amos, it's a wall. Minimum 10. Once you've got minimum 10, Shmo Dofen, says Rashi. It has the name of a wall. Even if it reaches up to heaven. And therefore, if there is for 6 foot minus a tiny little bit, Agmiri Rachmana Lemoshe Dofen Akuma. God Himself taught Moshe Rabbeinu that you couldn't bend that type of wall. Once it has the definition of a wall, meaning it's a minimum of 10 tefachim, then we can bend it all the way to 6 foot, just less. However, hacha here, l'shavuei l'dofen, where we've got to create the wall in the first place. With our pit, the pit hasn't got a wall. Sorry, without this sukkah, I shall go right around. Is this a wall here? Is that a wall of 9 tefachim? No, it doesn't have the din of a wall, because until it's 10 tefachim, it's nothing. It's not got the definition of a wall. You know, it's like what's the difference between a tunnel and an underpass? When does an underpass become a tunnel? How long does it have to be? I don't know the answer. Yeah, but we know clearly from this that until you've got 10 tefachim, that, my friend, is not a wall. Yeah, it's just a pile of bricks pretending to be a wall. Yeah. So in this case, we don't actually have a wall. So to say, oh, you know what? Let's create a wall by bending it around 6 foot. That you can't do. The Torah says, "Alach Moshe Sinai." Well, what will allow you to do is this: you don't have a wall, but will allow you to bend it a little bit and join it a little bit, but only up to 24 centimeters. We're giving you a bit of a leeway to create a wall. But while we're creating something, don't take liberties, right? Don't be a chutz with it. You want to create something from nothing, we'll only give you a little bit of leeway. And therefore, 3 tefachim. More than that, nothing like it's no good. You haven't got anything. Once you've got something of substance, then we can give you a bit more leeway. Once you've got 10 tefachim, then we can start bending you over 6 foot. Do you understand the distinction? Yeah?
Yeah.
But presumably, if it's within the 3 handbreadths, if there's a problem at the top, you can still bend it then.
It's gone.
If it's within the 3,
yeah,
and if you've got a problem at the top, you're counting it as a wall again, because you're saying you're counting it as a wall. Correct?
Oh, interesting. So you're saying you're suggesting 2 cases. You're suggesting.
Yeah, if you get both at the same time.
So let's suggest let's talk about this case.
Yeah.
So let's say that this wall. Well, I mean, I know we're looking down on it, but let's say we're pretending this is the, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm saying that's only 9 high.
Yeah, that's 9 high, and you need to. This is a dugout pit, less than 3 tefachim down there. Great, we're bending it over.
Yeah.
And then you're saying at the top.
At the top, you've got 6 foot.
Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. You can't do it the other way around, but you can do it this way around. Really, I love that. That's a great idea. Yeah, you can have both. You can have.
And the bending of the wall, is it only in Sukkah, or is that used elsewhere?
I mean, it's a general principle of the idea of Dofen Akuma. We talk in mechitzas as well. When it comes to mechitzas and things like Eruvin, things like that, then it has a practical application. But yeah, particularly here with the Sukkah. But beloved also, you'll see, we'll find that in mechitzas. We had a bit with Eruvin as well. This idea of beloved, about annexing, about joining things together. So that's says the Gemara. So let me just finish off. So Rashi says hacha, whereas here when you don't even need to have a wall, hacha, says Rashi, hacha is miyud, so less than 10 of a wall. Ein shem dofen alav, it doesn't have the name of a wall. Ela hashtahu debeinen l'shavoye dofen. Whereas here what you need to do is you need to create the wall. Hilkach ma she'enoi dofen lo agmir rachmana dofen akuma. When you don't have a wall, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't teach Moshe Rabbeinu halacha that you can bend it over to 6 foot, minimum up to 6 foot. V'halav do'pinu, because not a wall. Hilka pachos migimel tefachim. Therefore, it said a minimum of 3 tefachim. V'chol duchte in all directions. Lavud hu shapeh dami v'ilo eloi. Then if it's less than 3 tefachim, all good. You know, if you can dig a pit that extends close enough to the wall, so it's less than 3 tefachim, great, off you go. Make that into your 10 tefachim wall. If not, not. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll leave that. Let's just do, can we do one more bit? Quick bit, no, that's quick, because it's the one more case and then moves on to something else. Says the Gemara, you've got a sukkah of more than 20 amas possible. And inside it, you build a pillar, which is 10 tefachim high. Sukkah. And on top of it, on top of the sukkah, is a space of 7 by 7, which is a kosher sukkah. The floor space of a kosher sukkah. 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim. What do you think? Let me draw it for you. I've drawn one already. I'll draw it again a bit bigger for you. Okay. Okay, this is what we've got. Can you see that? No, because the light can come through the back, isn't it? It's white behind it. Right. You've got a very tall sukkah, over 20 tefachim high. So what you do is you build a pillar inside, solid pillar of minimum 10 tefachim. Therefore, this pillar is considered to be a wall. On top of the pillar, there's a platform of at least 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim, which is a kosher sukkah ground space. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's now within. It's less than 20 tefachim, 20 amas from the schach. Is that any good? What's the issue?
What's the distance between the edge of the trestle, as it were, to the wall? Right. To the proper wall. Yeah.
The truth is, we're going to ignore these walls. These walls won't help us. We're going to have a third principle here. Third halakha Moshe Sinai is, can we consider? Now I know we're looking at this as flat, but let's consider this as four. It's a square pillar. Mm-hmm. So it has 4 faces to it, otherwise known as 4 walls. Can the walls of this extend upwards? That's the question. Our problem is our sukkah doesn't have walls touching the schach. These walls are no good. They're too high. But this wall is okay. It's 10 tefachim. Could we say this wall can notionally, and you see I put the dotted lines there, could we say that extends upwards? Remember what we said previously? Once you've got a wall of 10 tefachim, it's a wall. And it can extend all the way up to Shemayim, notionally. So can we say the thing here? So says the Gemara, Abai again thought to say, good asik mechitzta. He thought to say, let the walls extend upwards. Let the walls of this pillar, a kosher wall, these are kosher walls, 10 tefachim, let them extend upwards to touch the schach notionally, and we're all good. Yeah. Look at look at Rashi. Banaba Amud Gva Asara. Rachok Midafanos Harbe. So Rashi says out the question that you could use the walls of the sukkah. He's built it way away from these. Not even a question of being Daladamas even. So there's not even a question of those, using those. That's the point Rashi's making. Let's carry on the Rashi. Sukkah, Shesh Barosho Shiva Umashu, says Rashi. It's a kosher sukkah. The platform, the airspace is kosher because it's 7 by 7 at least. Al Shiva Umashu. Should we say, says Abaya, good asik. Let's extend up the walls. Mechitzta, says Rashi. Good asik mechitzta shel amud. Should we extend up the walls of the pillar? Shiba mechutz, which is on the external faces of the pillar. Saviv hagmayim asara sevivos rosho. Surrounding the elevation of it, which is 10 tefachim around the edge of it. V'hareish behen gova yud, which has in it the height of 10. V'chashuva sukkah al rosha. We consider the sukkah is sitting on it. So although, I mean, I suppose I could draw it, that it's maybe I've misdrawn it. Maybe I could draw it like this.
The walls are of the pillar, not of the edge of the 7 by 7.
Yeah, that's what I've had to readjust. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what. Sorry, I readjusted it. It's a plinth.
Okay.
Yeah. Now what we're saying is, since those walls are 10 tefachim, let them extend upwards to reach the schach. And then we've got a good sukkah. If you're sitting on here, you're sitting on top of here, you're within 20 amos of the schach. You've got your walls, notional walls, extending upwards. Yeah, because there's no reason why these walls couldn't, notionally. All they're doing is we've capped them off, that's all. But in theory, they could just carry on. Yeah. So Rabbi Abai thought to say that because we got the principle of good asik.
To continue the wall.
Yeah. Says the Gemara. Yeah.
That's the same. Isn't that the same principle with our platform that we were building? We're saying if we build a platform and that's only at least 10 high, it doesn't matter if it's touching any walls or not. That area that the platform would be on.
Yeah.
So would that count?
Yeah. That's basically what it is. This is basically our raised platform, but it's already 10 off the ground. The other platforms we had weren't 10 off the ground.
No, they were
that's
just
why we needed those
ground.
side walls.
Right.
They didn't have walls at all. They weren't 10 tefachim off the ground. But once you're 10 tefachim off the ground, you've got walls. So once you've got walls, we said already, let them extend up to the Shemayim. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rava. So Rava again says to him, Ba'in mechitzas hanikeres veleika. He says, no, when it comes to sukkah, you have to have recognizable walls.
Yeah.
Notional walls is all very well and good. Bending over a wall is all very well and good when you've already got walls. But you've got to be able to see the walls. Here you can't see them. They're below you, not above you. You've got nothing to work with whatsoever. You could maybe say, if the walls, if you could actually, you could suggest that, I've just made it, if these were the walls here, and this is your floor, ignore this in the middle now, ignore that, it's a fireplace. This is the floor. You've got walls of 10 tefachim here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's bring the schach down slightly. This is not going to be 20 amos high. We could argue, okay, once you've got these walls, let them extend upwards. That you could argue. But then at least you can see the walls. Here you can't see the walls at all. No, says Rava, no good. No good. That's not going to happen. So although it's a nice idea, it's not going to work because when it comes to sukkah, you have to be able to see the walls. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Mr. Shem, we'll see you next time. Tomorrow's going to talk. The next case tomorrow's going to bring is you go up onto the flat roof of your house and you drive poles into the corners of the roof. So they are like literally they are the corners of each of the walls, and then you put schach on top of that with nothing, no filling in. What would be the case there? Will that be considered any good? Okay, we'll leave it there, Mr. Shem. We'll carry on next time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks. All the best.
Take care.